walked into a jewelry store to buy something special for his mom. Just minutes later, he found himself surrounded by police, without raising his voice, without stealing a thing, and without even knowing what went wrong. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon in Scottsdale, Arizona, the kind of day that feels suspended between seasons, where the breeze carries no urgency and the sunlight paints everything gold. The plaza was nearly empty. Palm trees framed clean sidewalks, and upscale storefronts offered everything from designer shoes to abstract art. Tucked among them was a high-end jeweler, Grantham and Lane. That's where Jalen Carter was headed, 19 years old, a student, a part-time worker, and today, just a son with a plan. He'd Googled the store the night before, saved its location, budgeted every dollar. For 3 months, Jalen had been stocking shelves at the campus bookstore, pocketing every extra cent. He even held on to birthday money he hadn't touched since July, all for this moment. His mother's birthday was coming up, and this time, he didn't want to settle for a candle or a handwritten card. He wanted something she could hold, something that would last. He checked the time, 2:36 p.m. He still had a few hours before his shift. Plenty of time. Adjusting the hood on his black Nike sweatshirt, Jalen stepped inside. The store welcomed him with the scent of lavender and a whisper of air conditioning. Soft lighting spilled across glass cases, making every piece of jewelry look like it was glowing from the inside. Rows of gold and silver rested behind fingerprint-free glass, necklaces with emerald pendants, diamond earrings, delicate rings that shimmered even without motion. Behind the counter, a middle-aged man in a navy suit glanced up, offering a standard smile. "Afternoon. Let me know if you'd like to see anything up close." Jalen returned a nod. "Just looking, thanks." He moved carefully, not out of nervousness, but because stores like this made you hyper-aware. Every step felt like a test. He paused in front of a display of necklaces, and one in particular caught his attention, a slim gold chain with a small key charm. Simple, elegant, nothing too flashy. He imagined his mom opening the box, Simone Bellamy, 45 years old, a nurse who raised him on her own, rarely surprised by gifts, and even less likely to splurge on herself. She usually wore the same 2 pieces of jewelry, a gold watch and a pair of hoop earrings. But this was something different. "Looking for a gift?" the associate asked, walking over. "Yeah," Jalen replied, "for my mom." "You've got a good eye," the man said, unlocking the case. "That one's 14 karat. Want to see it up close?" Jalen nodded, and the man placed the necklace on a velvet pad. It was perfect. Clean lines, soft gleam, understated beauty. The kind of thing that didn't scream for attention, but meant something real. Just as Jalen opened his mouth to ask about payment options, the bell above the door jingled softly. Someone else had entered. She didn't say a word, but the room changed anyway. A woman, late 50s or early 60s, stepped inside. Pale skin, sharp bob haircut, tailored slacks, and a blouse pressed crisp enough to reflect light. She moved like someone used to being heard. In her right hand, she held a leather handbag. In her eyes, she held judgment. Her name was Cheryl Danvers, and while Jalen didn't notice her, she noticed him. She didn't look at the displays. She looked at him, scanned his hoodie, his posture, his skin. Once, then again, like she was trying to solve a puzzle that didn't belong in her picture of the world. Jalen kept admiring the necklace. He didn't hear her subtle sigh, didn't see her take out her phone and unlock it, didn't catch the way she raised her brows at the associate behind the counter. But what he did notice, what made him pause, was how the room suddenly felt quieter, the kind of quiet that isn't natural, like someone hit a mute button just for him. He turned slightly. "How much did you say it was?" $429, the man said, "before tax." Jalen gave a small nod. "Cool. And you guys take Apple Pay?" "We do." That should have been the end of it. Just a young man buying a birthday gift. No shouting, no scene, no problem. But Cheryl had already made up her mind. She cleared her throat, just loud enough to cut through the air. The associate glanced at her, puzzled, then turned back to Jalen. To Cheryl, that was strike one. She moved closer to another case, never truly looking at the jewelry. Her fingers never let go of the phone. Her eyes never left the boy in the hoodie. And just as Jalen asked, "Would you mind holding it for a couple days, just to be sure I've got enough?" The man hesitated. Normally, that would be a routine request. But in this store, on this day, with that woman watching, things were about to get anything but routine. "We don't usually hold items without a deposit," the associate said, "but I can check with the manager." Jalen offered a small, hopeful smile. "I'd appreciate that." Meanwhile, just outside, Cheryl Danvers took 2 slow, deliberate steps back toward the exit. Her lips pressed into a thin, rigid line. As soon as the door closed behind her, she exhaled, like she'd just exited a high-stakes situation. She tapped her phone, raised it to her ear, and spoke with calm urgency. "Hi, yes. I need to report something," she said, watching through the store window. "There's a young man inside Grantham and Lane. He's wearing a hoodie, acting real nervous, keeps looking around. I think he might be planning to steal something." She paused, staring at him through the glass. "No, he hasn't taken anything yet, but it looks like he's casing the place." Back inside, Jalen was simply texting a friend, asking if he still had that old Visa gift card from Christmas. If he could swap cash for it today, he'd have just enough to fully cover the necklace. The associate returned from the back office. "All right," he said. "We can hold it for 24 hours if you leave $50 down. Does that work for you?" "Yeah," Jalen said with visible relief. "That's perfect." He pulled out his wallet. Just then, the front door opened again. Not Cheryl this time, but a young mom pushing a stroller. Jalen smiled politely as she maneuvered past him. For a moment, everything felt normal again. But outside, Cheryl hadn't left. She was still standing near the fountain, still on the phone, still reporting. She gave detailed descriptions, Jalen's clothes, his height, his skin tone. She mentioned the value of the jewelry he was looking at and that he had asked about making a deal. Every word laced with implication. Inside, Jalen handed over the deposit, got his receipt, and began turning toward the door, until something in the air changed. The associate looked up suddenly, his expression shifting. His eyes weren't on Jalen anymore. They were focused behind him, toward the parking lot. Jalen turned just enough to see what the clerk was staring at. 2 police cruisers rolling to a stop outside the storefront. His heart skipped. He glanced down at the small paper receipt in his hand, then back at the associate. Before he could ask anything, the door opened. 2 uniformed officers stepped in. They scanned the room once and walked straight toward him. Jalen froze. He didn't run. He didn't even move, because for the first few seconds, he couldn't make sense of what was happening. "Excuse me, son," said the taller officer, his voice calm but firm. His badge read, "Monsieur Delgado. We need to speak with you." Jalen blinked. "Me?" The second officer, a woman with dark brown hair pulled into a tight bun, added, "Could you just step over here for a moment?" Jalen glanced down at the small shopping bag in his hand. The receipt stuck out like a white flag. His throat was dry. "I didn't do anything. I was just—" "We're not accusing you of anything," Officer Delgado interrupted. "We just need to ask a few questions." The mother with the stroller paused awkwardly near a case of sapphire rings, suddenly pretending to be interested. Behind the counter, the associate stood frozen, hands folded, expression stiff. Jalen stepped slowly toward the side wall, the officers flanking him now. "What's your name?" the female officer asked. Jalen Richardson." "All right, Jalen. What brings you to the store today?" He held up the bag slightly. "I just put a deposit on a necklace for my mom's birthday." "You came alone?" Delgado asked. "Yes." "You live around here?" Tempe, Jalen said. I took the bus. There was a pause. Delgado clicked his pen. You been in here long? Jalen frowned. Why does that matter? The female officer, Officer Brenner, interjected softly. We're just following up on a report. Someone called in about suspicious behavior. Said you were looking around a lot. Jalen's eyes narrowed slightly. I was looking at jewelry, he said. That's what people do in a jewelry store, right? Delgado didn't answer. Officer Brenner flipped open her notepad. You said your name was Jalen Richardson? He hesitated. Yes. Mind showing some ID? I'm 17, Jalen said quietly. I have a student ID. He reached for his wallet again, moving carefully, slowly, aware now of every gesture. He handed it over. She examined it, jotted something down. Outside, Cheryl lingered near the storefront window, still watching. Her posture said she'd done something noble, like she had just prevented a crisis. Back inside, Jalen turned to the associate. You told them I did something? The man quickly shook his head. No, I didn't. I told them you were a customer. Jalen turned back to the officers. So, what now? Officer Delgado's voice finally softened. Look, we have to follow up any time a call like this comes in. You match the description. Jalen looked down at his hoodie, then back at Delgado. You mean I'm black? In a hoodie. The officers didn't respond. Brenner handed his student ID back. You said you left a deposit, right? Want to see the receipt? Jalen asked. Delgado nodded. Jalen passed it over. The officer looked it over, then handed it to Brenner. She turned to the associate. Mind if we speak with the store manager? I'm the assistant manager, he replied. And honestly, he didn't do anything wrong. He was respectful, paid the hold. I don't know why anyone would have called. Jalen exhaled, hard. Not because he was relieved, but because he was holding back something else. Frustration, humiliation, that sharp, burning kind that comes when you've done nothing wrong, but were treated like you had. Delgado gave a final nod. All right, I think we're done here. Jalen didn't move. Sorry for the inconvenience, Brenner added, in a tone that sounded like she'd said it 1,000 times. Out of habit, not sincerity. Jalen had just turned to leave when something in him paused. He stopped, then looked back toward the officers. His voice dropped slightly, quieter now but unmistakably steady. You know, my mom works in law enforcement, he said. She used to tell me something like this could happen. That one day, someone might call the police on me just for standing in the wrong place too long. I always thought she was being overly cautious. Delgado's lips pressed together. Brenner glanced down at her notepad. Then the bell above the door rang again. Jalen didn't even turn around. He sighed under his breath. Great. What now? But the energy in the room shifted. A tall black woman walked through the entrance, not hesitating, not asking for permission. She wore a dark blazer, slacks, and a visible government badge clipped to her hip. She carried herself like someone used to taking control of rooms. Jalen, she said calmly, but her voice was razor sharp beneath the surface. You okay? He turned. Relief, shame, and something like pride flickered in his eyes. Yeah, I'm fine. The two officers straightened, as if instinctively sensing authority beyond their rank. Can we help you, ma'am? Delgado asked. She raised her badge wordlessly. It didn't belong to any local department. The seal alone said everything. Special Agent Simone Bellamy, FBI, Field Office Chief, Phoenix Division. And then she said the 5 words that froze the entire store. I'm his mother. What happened? Silence. For a long second, it felt like the entire building had paused, caught between air and gravity. Even the air conditioning seemed to hush. Simone's presence didn't shout. It pressed, like the pressure before a storm. She scanned the room with trained precision. The officers, the associate behind the counter, The mother by the rings who suddenly seemed fascinated with a sapphire she hadn't looked at once, and finally, the woman by the door. Cheryl, frozen now in place, caught. Simone stepped up to her son, looked him over from head to toe, not with panic, but with the practiced instincts of someone who's seen too much. Once she was sure he was unharmed, she turned her focus to the officers. "What's going on here?" she asked. Her tone was low, controlled, cold. Delgado cleared his throat. "We received a report about suspicious behavior involving your son. We weren't aware of his identity at the time." "I'm aware," Simone said sharply. "So tell me, what exactly was the suspicious behavior? Buying a necklace?" Brenner tried to soften the tension. "Ma'am, we're required to respond to any report. We didn't accuse him of anything. Just a few questions, that's all." "Did he match a suspect from a recent crime?" "No, ma'am," Brenner admitted. "Did he threaten anyone?" "No." "Did the staff file a complaint?" The associate raised his hand slightly, nervously. "No, not at all. He was polite. Paid a deposit. Honestly, he was great." Simone turned back to Delgado. "So why was he pulled aside? Why was he asked for ID?" Delgado's jaw tightened, but his tone remained flat. "Standard protocol. We wanted to confirm." "You wanted to confirm that a black teenager in a hoodie wasn't robbing a jewelry store because a white woman got nervous," she cut in. "Let's not pretend it was anything else." Near the door, Cheryl shifted uncomfortably. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Jalen stood completely still, fists in his hoodie pocket, watching, waiting. Simone looked down at him, placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "This is why I taught you to speak clearly. This is why I told you, never reach quickly, never raise your voice, even when you're innocent, especially when you're innocent." Delgado nodded once, his voice quieter now. "We understand. It was a misunderstanding." Simone turned toward him, eyes firm. "No, you don't understand. Because for you, it's just another Tuesday. You'll log the call, forget it by dinner time. But for my son, this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was confirmation that even when he does everything right, someone will still see him as a threat." Brenner shifted again, clearly uncomfortable. "Ma'am, we hear you, and we're sorry." Then Simone looked directly at Cheryl. "Are you the one who called?" Cheryl nodded faintly. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I was just trying to be cautious. He seemed off." Simone walked toward her, not fast, but deliberate. What seemed off? The fact that he was quiet? That he didn't speak unless spoken to? That he was respectful? Or was it just the fact that he was young and black in a place you didn't think he belonged? Cheryl's mouth trembled. "That's not what I—" Simone held up a hand. "I'm not here for excuses. I'm here for accountability." Cheryl shrank back slightly. "I'm sorry." Simone said nothing for a long moment, just looked at her, not with rage, but with something deeper, something Cheryl couldn't hold eye contact with. Then she turned back to Jalen. "Let's go." He nodded, picked up the small bag. The receipt still poked out from the top like a quiet reminder. As they passed the officers, Simone paused. "For future reference," she said, her voice sharp and clear, "if someone reports suspicious behavior without any threat, without a crime, maybe your first response shouldn't be intimidation. Maybe watch, ask, think. And maybe ask yourselves why someone seems suspicious to you in the first place." No one answered. As the door shut behind them, the mother with the stroller let out a breath she'd clearly been holding. The associate rubbed his hands on his pants like he'd just woken from a bad dream. And Cheryl? She stood near the glass, suddenly very, very small. Her eyes were wide, frozen, still gripping her phone in both hands like it had just turned into something heavier than she could hold. But what Simone had left behind in that room wasn't just a warning. It was a mirror. And not everyone likes what they see when they're forced to look. Outside, the sunlight hit differently than it had just 20 minutes earlier. It didn't feel soft anymore. It didn't feel gentle. It felt sharp, unforgiving, the kind of light that doesn't warm you. It exposes you. Jalen walked a step behind his mother, silent, not because he had nothing to say, but because too much had just happened and his mind was still trying to file it all away. They reached the black SUV with government plates. Simone opened the passenger door for him like he was 5 years old again. And even though he was nearly grown, he didn't argue. He got in. She settled into the driver's seat, closed the door, and just sat there, eyes forward, hands still on the wheel, quiet. Jalen finally broke the silence. "You tracked me?" "I got a text from the store's fraud alert system," she said, not turning to look. "It pinged me when you used the family Apple Pay on a high-dollar item. Standard protocol." Jalen gave a crooked smile. "So, basically, you've got me on surveillance." Simone glanced over. "You're not a kid anymore, Jalen. You're a young black man in Arizona. I track you because I love you, and clearly, I'm not wrong for it." He didn't argue. He couldn't. Simone tapped the steering wheel with her fingers. "You handled yourself well in there. You kept your voice even. You stayed calm. That's not easy." Jalen looked out the window. "Didn't feel calm. But you didn't show it, and that matters." He pulled at a loose string on his hoodie. "It's messed up. I was literally buying a necklace for you, and I get treated like I'm about to rob the place." Simone didn't respond right away. Then she said, "That woman didn't see you, Jalen. She saw a version of you that she's been taught to fear. That's not your fault, but it is your reality." He let that sit for a moment. "I thought you being in the FBI might, I don't know, protect me more." Her voice softened. "Me wearing a badge doesn't shield you from perception. It just means I see how deep the problem goes, from the inside." Jalen leaned his head back against the seat. She didn't even flinch when the cops showed up, like she knew nothing would happen to her. "She probably did," Simone replied. No hesitation. He turned to her. "What happens to people like her after this?" Simone exhaled. "Nothing. She goes home, tells herself she was just being careful, maybe even thinks she was the one treated unfairly. That's crazy." "Yep." A long pause. Then Jalen asked, almost quietly, "So what's the point of being careful? What's the point of doing everything right if it doesn't matter?" Simone turned fully toward him, her voice calm but unshakable. "The point isn't about them," she said. "The point is you, your dignity, your name, how you carry yourself. You didn't do anything wrong. And still, you walked out of that store standing taller than everyone in it." Jalen blinked, staring at the dashboard. She added, "Don't ever let someone else's fear shrink who you are." He cracked a small smile. "You sound like a TED Talk." "Good," she said. "TED Talks change lives." He chuckled. For the first time in an hour, it felt like something loosened in his chest. Simone started the engine. "Let's go home. We'll figure out the necklace later." Jalen hesitated. "Actually," she looked at him. "What?" He shrugged. "Can we go back in?" She raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "I want to buy it. Like now. Full price. No hold. No hesitation." "You sure?" "Yeah," he said. "I want them to see me finish what I came to do." She smiled, just a little. "All right, let's go make them uncomfortable again." They got out of the SUV and walked back toward the store, heads high. No shame, no apology. What Jalen didn't know in that moment was that this choice, this return, this decision to finish would stay with every person in that store for a very long time. The bell above the door chimed. Every head turned. Cheryl was still inside, still pretending to scroll her phone near the bracelets. But her body flinched the second Simone reappeared. Then she saw Jalen behind her. Her expression dropped like glass. The officers were gone. The air had settled a bit. But now, with their return, tension snapped back into place like a rubber band pulled too tight. Jalen walked straight to the counter, calm, steady, eyes forward. He held out the receipt. "I'd like to pay the rest now." The associate blinked, startled, then cleared his throat. "Yes, of course. One moment, sir." Simone stood off to the side, arms folded, watching the room like she wasn't on duty, but never really off duty either. She didn't look at Cheryl until Cheryl started walking toward them. I really am sorry," Cheryl said, her voice small now. "I never meant for it to go this far. You meant to call the police," Simone interrupted, still not turning toward her. "You meant to describe him as suspicious. That wasn't an accident." Cheryl looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Jalen turned, locking eyes with her. "What about me scared you so much? My hoodie? My skin?" I didn't say that," Cheryl stammered. When I came in and saw you standing there, I was shopping," he cut in. "I know, there have been stories in the news and..." Simone stepped in, calm, clear, cold. "You didn't want to be that person, so you became this one. But becoming this person, the one who makes assumptions and lets them spiral into something bigger, that was a choice." And now Cheryl was standing there, hoping someone else would help her clean up the consequences. "I'm not a bad person," she whispered. "No," Simone replied, finally turning to face her. "But you made a bad decision. And the truth is, our decisions reveal who we are, especially in moments that matter." Jalen didn't say anything. He just turned back to the counter and tapped his phone to pay. A soft ding from the reader echoed in the quiet room. It was done. No hesitation, no apology, no drama. The necklace was paid in full. The associate placed the box into a soft velvet pouch, his voice steadier now. "Happy birthday to your mom," he said, and this time he meant it. Jalen nodded. He turned and headed for the door. Simone followed, but paused before stepping out. She glanced back over her shoulder, right at Cheryl. "If you ever call the police again," she said evenly, "make sure it's because there's an actual threat, not just your discomfort." Cheryl didn't answer. Simone went on, "Because every time someone misuses that call, they gamble with someone else's life, and next time, the mother might not get there in time." Jalen held the door open. Simone stepped out. They walked into the Arizona sun, bold and unblinking. Jalen shook the small bag gently. "You still don't wear much jewelry?" Simone smiled as she unlocked the car. "Guess I'll start." Neither of them looked back, but inside the store, it was no longer just quiet. It was thoughtful, reflective, especially Cheryl, because sometimes the biggest change doesn't happen during the confrontation. It happens just after the door closes. Later that night, the necklace sat quietly on the kitchen counter. No speech, no ceremony. Jalen just slid the velvet pouch toward his mother and said, "Early gift." Simone opened the box slowly. Inside was the delicate chain, the small gold key. She smiled. "A key?" she asked softly. Jalen leaned on the counter. "Because you're the reason I've never felt locked out of anything. School, life, the world. You always made me feel like I belonged." Simone nodded, swallowing emotion. "It's beautiful." He didn't say anything more. He didn't need to. And she didn't ask. That was enough. That night, Simone stood quietly in the doorway to Jalen's room. He was on his bed, watching basketball highlights, headphones in. When he noticed her, he paused. "You okay?" she asked. He shrugged. I don't know. I feel like I should be madder or sadder, but I'm just tired. That's honest, she said. Jalen sat up a little. You know what scared me the most? He asked. She waited. I didn't do anything wrong, and they still looked at me like I might have. Simone nodded. That's the trap. You can do everything right, and the system still reacts based on fear, bias, and assumption. That's why you keep showing up. So they get used to seeing young men like you in spaces they've been taught you don't belong. He sat in silence for a moment. Do you think she'll remember me? Simone took a slow breath. Yes, but that's not your burden. You don't carry her growth. You carry your own. Jalen nodded. That truth settled something in him. Simone stepped forward, kissed his forehead, and left the room. The next morning, Cheryl Danvers sat alone in her car outside a grocery store. Her coffee was lukewarm, her hands still trembling just slightly. No headlines, no lawsuits, no public outrage. And yet something had shifted. She couldn't stop hearing Simone's words. Maybe the first step is asking why someone looks suspicious to you in the first place. That sentence stayed with her longer than any police report ever could. She looked up and saw a group of teenagers walking toward the store, laughing, shoving each other gently, backpacks half-zipped. One of them wore a hoodie. She didn't reach for her phone. She just watched. Simone wore that necklace every day after. Not because it was expensive, but because of where it came from. From her son, yes, but more than that, from his courage, from his dignity. It wasn't just a gift, it was proof that even when the world tries to make you feel small, the real power is in walking back into that room and leaving taller than when you came in. Because the truth is, real change doesn't always come from making noise. Sometimes it comes from making people think. And if you're watching this, and you've ever made assumptions about someone based on how they looked, where they were, or what they wore, ask yourself, where did that come from? And then challenge it. But if you're someone who's ever been judged before you even said a word, keep showing up. Keep speaking. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be heard. And most of all, you deserve to belong. Change starts with awareness, but it grows when people act differently. The next time